I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. For thou art with me, thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the most super intelligent force of love and creation possible at the highest levels of vibrational frequency forever. What's happening? Benton here. Day two, stream two of no live chat. Thank you for your patience. I appreciate it. Um, Shout out to Joe Moore, who may be listening and would generally offer peace and blessings. Um, if I had a way to turn the chat on, just for him, right? Uh, yeah, and I don't want to get into the specific reasons for no live chat. It just seems like it's the way to go, at least for now in the near future. And I'm certainly, as always, quite grateful that there are folks willing to listen to yours truly, both live and on replay. Certainly amusing to watch the views on yesterday's stream after the stream was completed, to watch the the view count bounce all over the place. Early on, I think it was up to like 140, and then back to right at 100, and then I think it settled in around 140. Subscriber count fell below 760, I believe, for the first time ever, and settled in at 758. Typically, it bounces around between like 760 and 764. That's the first time I've seen it drop below 760. I think 840 was the all-time high for the channel. Not that it matters. And I'm finishing up the egg drink. Bear with me one moment. Actually, I got a little more left than I thought. Yes, society's secret. Let's at least address the stream topic. And then some personal things I would like to ramble about as well. But yes, we will be talking, the Royal We will be discussing society's secret, or at least one of them. At the risk of implying that there's only one. And society, of course, within the context of the vacuous, delusory, adversarial realm of business transactions, and then, concepts of antithesis, making an enemy of what I am, and then, of course, via Moloch's machine. And perhaps Moloch's machine would be representative of the master of society, and also the pagan deity that's been upgraded, and updated by Allen Ginsberg. No reason to slander. Well, slander wouldn't be even the correct term. We don't need to debunk Allen Ginsberg. He's debunked on his own Wikipedia page. But referring to, the American poet who, in his famous poem, updated the concept of Moloch to represent industrial and then post-industrial society. And my own, Benton's own ideas. Benton does not want to claim ownership, but Benton, speaking about effectively the way society operates via Moloch's machine, and this is not the secret, I'll be getting into it, to have the spiritually perfected, perhaps, and that's my that's what I know to be true, the spiritually perfected, infant child sacrificed, figuratively, although literally as well, but to Moloch. And that's the way that the children are raised, through the public indoctrination centers and up through the corporate structures to then be able to be of use to the corporations, if that makes sense. So certainly we will be getting into that. Also, shout out to Replay Crew, and most likely I would be preparing to go do the laundry right when they open at 6 a.m. And there's several laundromats nearby, and in typical Benton fashion, I found one that I'm comfortable with. I've established a rapport with I believe the owner. There is a bit of a language gap there, and I was still going to go to make myself go, even though I would prefer to put it off and do this live stream. Except I realized no quarters. I did not have enough quarters. People say, well, it's a laundromat. There's a machine. Yes, there is. And my experience has taught me that there's no quarters in the machine right when they open. And the fella that I believe owns the property, um, that I have a bit of a rapport with, and we do have a rapport, and he's washing down every morning he's washing down the parking lot, and not wanting to interrupt him. Now, the wrinkle is that as I walk to that laundromat, I pass a different laundromat that does have a change machine. However, I don't wash my clothes there, but I do buy my boxes of Tide powdered soap there. And as far as integrity, principles, and doing the right thing, there's more or less a sign like, hey, don't use our change machine if it's not for things that are here. And it's probably already a gray area that I'm going in there and buying their boxes of Tide. And I don't know at $1 a box if they're making a profit or if this is just something that's supplied. My laundromat just doesn't have the machine. They don't have a machine to sell boxes of soap. So, and this does say something about society. How many people within society would just say, oh, fuck it, it's just this once, blah, blah, blah. Well, number one, just this once quickly becomes every time, because now, the person, I would be sending myself the message that, well, I don't need to save up my own quarters. Typically, I would have my own quarters already saved up and ready, to deploy. And that was my fault for just not doing that, right? But then, how quickly does that become like just a crime of convenience, where now it's like, oh, well, every time now the royal we forgets to be prepared. Okay. And this is sort of the slippery slope of the moral hazards, that are society itself introduces. And, back to yesterday's topic around individuals, pulling themselves up within themselves, mind, body, and spirit, by their bootstraps, but within themselves. And this is part of that, yes, I can do the laundry later. I prefer to do it first thing in the morning to be less bothered. And I am feeling a bit of the cranky old man. So bear with me. I don't want to get up too much of a head of steam. And I also want to talk about my diet, which is interesting with respect to some hormonal things going on. Oh, and it's August 1st, and Benton's birthday is coming up. Not expecting anything in the way of donations or gifts. But, I do like the month of August. I'm a fan, certainly. And, my actual birth date, people either know it or they don't care. But it's between the 1st and the 22nd. Mainly don't want to be confused for anything but Sun in Leo. Not that the astrology is that important, but, it is what it is, as it always is. But, I did have the thought when looking at, being about $1 short on quarters. I thought, well, I could sneak in there and, do this. And then with Benton's luck, Benton is the exception. Like what everybody else can get away with, air quotes, I can't ever get away with for whatever reason. So, there would be some person right there to like yell at me probably like, how dare you use this change machine? And, I do still need to continue to buy it's super convenient to be able to grab my soap, for $1. Don't want to fuck that up. So, and not based on fear, just, and doing the right thing. They've put a sign there and said, hey, if you're not doing laundry here, please don't, use our change machine. Well, I'm already sort of not living up to it. It's a gray area. Right. And then if they saw me doing that, then I could say, okay, well, I was just using my best judgment. And if you folks don't want me to buy out of this vending machine, I certainly won't. Even then, I guess I could still bring in my own quarters. Right. And some may say, well, what's the big deal? What's the difference? You're thinking too much into it. You're reading too much into it. No, this is in order to have a proper society, again, based on the notion of individuals doing better. It's the only way to have a proper society is when enough of the individuals will just do the right thing, even if it in the short run is not convenient for them. See? Because it's not Benton in a vacuum. And I think a lot of folks don't really understand this, and I'm not lecturing the listeners, just, and perhaps the listener relates to this as well. It's not Benton in a vacuum, because if it was just this was the only time it was ever going to happen, and I was the only person who might be going in there to take the change, and then the common sense and the word of mouthing and the conventional wisdom of everything, pretty soon you're going to develop. There will be some sort of pattern of folks who are just saying, "Oh well, just go in that laundromat there and get your quarters," right? And how many people on a regular basis going in there and doing that, and pretty soon somebody wants to do their laundry, and now they're inconvenienced running around begging for somebody to break a 20 or whatever, and get some quarters. It's not good for anybody. Now these are also some older school laundromats that don't have the no electronic means to pay for the load of laundry, which I prefer actually overall. I'm not a big fan of that. I want the old school quarters, damn it. One moment. Apologies. Hang on, give me just a second. I'll be right back. Oh shit. Forgot to turn the camera off. All right, we're back. Thank you for your patience. Multitasking, which is not my forte. Just need to wipe out the bottom of this cup before all of whatever's left hardens. But yeah, back to notions of integrity and doing the right thing, and even having a populace with enough individuals to be able to see the effects of when just everybody's sort of doing their own thing and going off the reservation and just sort of willy-nilly making up their own rules. Again, that one person in a vacuum, probably not a big deal. It's when more or less everybody's behaving that way. It becomes a cumulative effect. And then it's like, okay, how is there going to be a proper society then? And then, of course, within this vacuous, delusory, adversarial realm of business transactions, via Moloch's machine, uh, the transactional society, it's realistically, it's people nowadays just sort of putting on Front Street, that in order to get ahead or to financially make it, there's some version of not having principles, or moving beyond or transcending one's own integrity, right? Even something like Caleb Hammer on the financial audits, more or less saying, well, I can't recommend this directly, but hinting around that a lot of people just lie on their resumes with their experience and their education or something, in order to get jobs, just something like that, right? Seemingly innocuous. Well, but then magnify that effect throughout society. That's a degenerates. The society degenerates as a result over time, and then as each little thing, it's like a snowball effect. Also, as each little thing just becomes normalized. Well, okay, well, it's okay to to have AI write your university paper, just and on and on and on. How is there to be a proper society? But then the conventional wisdom and the word of mouthing is, relax. What's the big deal? Well, the big deal is societal collapse. That's the big deal. So the big deal is to live in a society that's in a perpetual state of collapse. And that is society's secret. Via Moloch's machine, it's this notion. People haven't subscribed to a notion that society, America, and I'm speaking in a nearly entirely strictly American context, this idea that, well, there was proper society, and there sort of was. And, in the past, in my arguments, is that was what the system demanded that society, be seemingly proper. That was what served the system at the time, the sort of building up of the country. Meanwhile, Benton here referencing that, pretty much all social problems unrelated to technology fully entrenched and fomented in this country by 1960. So it's now 65 years of the powers that be, LARPing as if these issues are being addressed and managed and resolved. Meanwhile, no such thing is occurring. So that is a description of a society in collapse. When all of the same problems have persisted for at least 65 years, while, again, my favorite word recently, while ostensibly, actual goodwill or good faith attempts are being made to fix these problems. That's does seem to be that the masses subscribe to that idea that there are, good faith efforts to address these things. Absolutely not. It's a feature, not a bug. So society's secret is that it's never not in a state of collapse. And doesn't that make sense when looking at this place, Earth, whatever we want to call it, the realm, when looking at it from the context of aligning itself with death, or, lacking the ability to express life, right? True life, in the ways of, again, not a Bible channel, but, to reference the Bible, concepts around I am the way, I am the truth, I am the life. That's not this world. Okay. Now some people will say, well, yeah, two things can be true at once, but, and then, the plants and the trees and the animals and all of that. Sure. Okay. Right. But it rings hollow, so I'm going to go ahead and go with, this is a realm of death. It certainly seems to be that way. So yeah, what else would I expect then? So would I expect a living, breathing society that's, honestly and earnestly taking stock of the problems and the struggles and the strife and the pain, that faces individuals within society in order to resolve these issues, either with their help or on their behalf, right? For the betterment of all citizens, right? Or the benefit of all members of society. And that's part of the mind control. Part of the mind control is to be opted into a subscription service, right? In some ways without one's consent, or to just tacitly be signed up for these ideas that, well, yes, of course, society, generally speaking, is a proper society. And this is sort of an anomaly because everything gets blamed on the politicians, and then from one of two perspectives, depending on the person's point of view. But then since 08, 09 and, Occupy Wall Street, and then the Tea movement, Tea Party, taxed enough already. Since that happened, I'm a little confused as to why people don't blame banks for a lot of this, and bankers and financial institutions. And the conclusion I'm reaching is that it's because Americans, the national religion being consumerism, Americans actually are quite fond of being able to access debt or credit. Interesting that debt and credit are actually the exact same thing. Isn't that interesting? It's actually, it's contextual, right? Same fucking thing, depending. The exact same debt is a credit depending on how it's viewed, from what perspective. Funny how that works. But yeah, these people to accumulate debts, at the level of consumer credit, right? So that's probably part of the unwillingness to attribute a lot of this to the banks, and then the boom bust economic cycles, the never-ending series of expansion and contraction of the economic cycles, that helps lull people into thinking, okay, well, the economy was good and now it's bad. Well, when it seems to be good, that's generally the boom. And when it seems to be bad, that's generally the contraction phase. And what we're seeing over time is and I'm not an expert on I'm not an expert on any of this actually, but at one time I had studied some of these things enough to speak a little more intelligently. But now I'm starting to hear about this K-shaped economy, which apparently is that, to draw, I guess, a straight line, like the left side of the K, and then in the middle to draw a 45-degree angle, a line going upward. Well, that's the economy for the corporations and the wealthy. Okay, it's actually up, 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 right? And then so the bottom part of the K, well, that's us, right? Or the proletariat, or the masses, the underclass, meaning worse, worse, worse. So as as the typical American is now just sort of, the word escapes me, but, much to the chagrin of the commoners, the common folk, and the idea of the bad economy, and all of this. Did I lose my point? Dang it, trying to find a word. Chagrin. It's this idea so while the regular American is like, inflation, wages are, they're increasing somewhat, but effectively they're not increasing at the level of buying power, so the little guy, the common folks, getting squeezed, while simultaneously the overall economy must always be growing for the most part, like it has to be. So when they talk about the gross domestic product, the GDP growth, that's a rate of growth. So the corporate profit, not revenue, profit is now growing. So the already very profitable corporate system, its growth rate is comparable to the growth rate of the GDP, and generally would probably, I'm assuming, not being an economist, but would be expected to be somewhere near each other. But the corporate profit growth is now double the growth rate of the overall economy, which is probably not even growing. I mean, a lot of this occurs through, hocus pocus at the level of accounting and ledgers. And if anybody's looked into Enron and those accounting practices, and to recognize that those accounting practices have become widespread, and, how else is the Dow Jones Industrial Average continuing to just always go up over time? And it does. I'm sure there's some sensical reasons why, but to perpetually go up, up, and up, and then all of these corporations doing so well, so when people talk about Enron as if it was an anomaly, and I'm glad that got fixed. No, it didn't get fixed. That was the prototype for a new way of cooking the books, and now it's all a bunch of Enrons, folks. It's all a bunch of Enrons, which, remember, was the darling stock of Wall Street for something like 9 years in a row. And then very quickly the stock went to near zero because a lady journalist looked into their books and said, look at this. They're actually fiscally insolvent on paper because of the way they were cooking the books. And then the stock almost overnight went to near zero. Yes, that really happened. And what I'm here to say is, no, that was there. It's all a bunch of Enrons now. And now it's just normal, like Amazon, the stock prices of like Amazon and Tesla. But, there was a time, I remember the 90s in the dot-com bubble, there was a lot of talk of how could these stock prices be going up so high, because where are the earnings, right? It used to be necessary to have earnings in order to have the stock price, especially way back in the day when, Walmart stock was doing so well. Yeah, they had actual earnings, right, to justify that. And then at a certain point, it's just, why even bother to have the earnings first before the stock price gets pumped up, perpetually. And that's where things are now. Again, sounds like yet another example of a society that's in a perpetual state of collapse. So let's look up the meaning of the word perpetual, because why not? Because if I hadn't fumbled, if Benton hadn't messed things up by forgetting about the quarters, and that's a habit also, just assuming, I'd been in such the habit of having my quarters ready, just not even thinking about them until it was time to start, getting my clothes organized and everything to walk over there. And it's like, oh, wait a minute, no quarters. Oh, shit. And this realm will certainly give you no quarter. Believe that. This realm is not going to grant you any quarter. No, it will not. Where are we at here? Oh, perpetual. Yes. One moment. Yes, he's really reading the dictionary to you, but I'll be quick. Perpetual. Perpetual. Where is it? There it is. Adjective, lasting forever or for an indefinitely long time. There we go. Number 2, set up to be in effect or have tenure for an unlimited duration. That's what I would go by for in this case. Set up to be in effect or have tenure for an unlimited duration also means continuing and uninterrupted. I mean, that's what it is, folks. And so how much mileage does Moloch's machine, psychologically, it gets a lot of mileage out of manipulating the populace based on their notion of, number one, that society has been a proper society at times in the past. No. Number one, no. When it suited the Moloch's machine to operate American society in a way that appeared to be proper and appropriate, it behaved that way for a time. And then the moment that things shifted and the system needed something different at the level of the behavior and the belief systems of the populace, then the populace was no longer behaving in ways that would lead to, the performance or the undertaking of a proper society. See, and my assertion is that if I look at what society is right now and how, unacceptable it should, the fact that people don't treat it, what's happening today, as if it were wholly unacceptable is, I understand the reasons why, but it's still shocking on some level. But then to romanticize the past as if that was good and this is bad, or that was proper and this is improper. Well, what I would say is a proper society would never devolve or degenerate into what is present today, because a proper society, having grown and evolved and sort of, making itself even better as it goes along on a progression, at some point society would recognize, oh, well, there's a potential for this thing to go the other direction. So what measures can individuals petition the government and the powers that be to make sure to put mechanisms in place to prevent society from backsliding or for sliding into what it has become today? What I would argue is that it's always been what it is today, and that the present features, what's presently on display with society, is exactly what Moloch's machine needs society to be in order to achieve its objectives in service of its master, which is antithesis. And antithesis makes an enemy of what I am. And that actually perfectly and logically explains something I heard somebody say succinctly many years ago, which was that this place is exactly like it as it's supposed to be by design, and that it's simply impossible for humans to change it in that way. And in fact, humans lack the capability, as we see Americans simply individually within themselves are so far below a minimum standard level within themselves, mind, body, and spirit, and that to lump them together collectively actually makes things worse, in my estimation, because then when you have a whole bunch of people who, outside of their own power centers, away from their power, they mistakenly believe, well, we're in a group, so individually, what's my ownership of this group? What's my stake in this group? What's my own responsibilities? What is, that all goes out the window because of the psychology of the individuals, for the most part, being set up to follow strong authority, right? And some of this does seem to be sort of inborn into, some people seem to be a little more inclined to react and respond to what strong authority demands. And then that's more of the right-wing fascist types. And then the people that are more predisposed to just directly fighting authority anywhere they can find it, that's the closer to the left, right? The left, right. That's closer to the left. The leftist communists, or whatever's going on the far left, and then everybody else just sort of in the middle. You know, um, and in my view, it's very important. And again, I'm very optimistic about individuals transcending these limitations within themselves, and it does seem very important to me to for individuals to just fully accept what I'm saying here if they find it to be true, because the mind control is set up whereby anytime the individual is faced with any of these societal problems, to always direct the efforts externally where the individual has no power. See? So in order to reverse that, again, that's an inversion. So for the individual to even train themselves to direct that inwardly and say, well, I have no power externally here. Now, what I am never lacks power, but Benton, in the context of this vacuous, delusory, adversarial realm of business transactions, there's no power to be found for Benton within the delusion. See, and that's where we get to the idea of no external meaning. The meaning, just like the power is only accessible within myself. Meaning can only be found inside myself, even if it's to externally participate and observe, but then to abstractly bring parts of those concepts or the whole concepts into my internal space, and then to sort of bake a cake or put it all together, right, to lift myself up and to access my power and to define meaning for myself, right, or to find meaning within myself on behalf of myself for myself, because everything external is Moloch's machine, which is involved in making sure everything operates on behalf of the system, in service of the system, for the system's own purposes. It's one or the other. Now we're back to, again, the ideas of computer simulation around, in each new delusory moment, now it's here, now it's gone, now it's here, now it's gone. The creative force that never lies dormant is always giving birth to something new, and that's being measured in each new moment, and whatever that output is either serves the most super intelligent force of love and creation possible at the highest levels of vibrational frequency, or it serves the antithesis of that notion, and there's no middle ground. See, so I've just discovered yet another mechanism, whereby that operates, and it probably pervades all experience and all of society, at least, especially externally, right? Or, well, that's not even correct. Forget about that last part. Yeah, strike that from the record. But yeah, it made sense until that last sentence there. And the rare error, right? Which sort of does kind of show the difficulty of performing such a discourse. Again, speaking at length extemporaneously off the dome. And then also recognizing that, why does nobody play my content and pause it and point by point pick it apart? Well, because they're not able to, because I've not left enough meat on the bone, right? And I would like to think that's why folks listen to this, but I've recognized over time some of it is just my sort of folksy, the tone of my voice, the way I talk, right? And all of these things. It's really, a lot of times, it's people merely listening to the sound of my voice, which is fine, because I do the same thing, listening to YouTube, whatever many insane amount of hours every day that Benton is listening to YouTube. So yes, I get it as well. Yeah, very interesting. Never a dull moment. So yeah, I did want to talk about, so it seems like rant over for now. Certainly, the royal we will get back to it. But yes, society's secret is that it maintains itself in a perpetual state of collapse. That's I want to go back to that point, because I can see now that I have more to say. But yeah, I've been on restricted calories for a while, not for any reason other than, number one, I'm able to. 2 straight years of severe digestive problems and illness, chronic illness. And it was actually closer to 4 years total to finally where I said, okay, it looks like my digestion is fairly normal at this point. It was about pretty close to 4 years. was at least three. It was at least 3 solid years of illness, and the first two restricted calories only because I would become, I was eating as much as I was able to with effectively no appetite, and a lot of foods would make me sick. Right, just food in general would make me sick at first, and no appetite for like the first 9 months. Figured out what I was able to eat and just more or less made myself eat it because I knew it was important to eat regularly. And with the malabsorption and all of these things, and so and medically that's known as semi-starvation. It's not fasting, but in a way the body treats it as fasting, and that's probably part of the not having an appetite was, if you look at animals, when they get very sick, they don't eat. Whatever that is beneficially to the body with fasting. Some of that is still achievable while still eating food, but eating way less calories than normal, if that makes sense. So I do seem to have an ability to do that. And my digestion had kind of gotten a little confused. I think we all have that problem, in the intestines from time to time. Some people are just always, as regular as can be, right? No matter what. But, something I take very seriously and do my best to manage those processes. And everything's good. Everything's good. I think this morning was 2 movements in a row, right? So yeah, I like stacking those days, at least once every 24 hours if possible. But I cranked up the calories starting about 3 days ago, I think it was. So yeah, not yesterday, but the day before. And I forgot. It was like, because even on restricted calories, as long as I'm not going through some kind of depressive funk, which doesn't seem to be a thing anymore, with the, and I never stay there too long. I think I managed like 2 weeks at that point, or maybe a whole month, but that was an anomaly. But that, anyway, don't need to get into depressive episodes. Fortunately, Benton is not prone to them, and they've been rare in Benton's life. But the point I'm making is around testosterone and hormone production. And because I was still making enough, and still, when I say restricted calories, it wasn't that low. I was probably on, I don't know, it's enough to not gain weight and enough to not lose weight. Or actually, I was slightly losing. That's what it was. I'd getting a little sloppy around the middle. So yeah, I don't know, maybe 1,500 calories a day. And then I've cranked it up to, 2,500 maybe even a little more, closer to 3,000. And boy, the testosterone just immediately shot through the roof. And so sort of reviewing my behaviors, it's like realizing, yeah, I'm still peaceful and, treating people well, but noticing, yeah, I did become a little more, a little more pep in the step, a little more inclined to like a me first type thing, or a, when normally I'd be a little more deferential, I might be willing to, I see other people are sort of rushing to the front and kind of pushing their way through, or people are driving their cars and, I'm a pedestrian, I'm about to walk through here. Normally I might just wait for the sort of log jam to subside. But, I see this guy, he's going to make this right turn, but he's sort of trying to bull his way through. Like he's creeping up to try to make it to where I can't even walk through that space there. Meanwhile, he can't even go anyway, unless he's going to drive over the sidewalk. And so at a certain point, it's like, oh, fuck it. I'll just, it's on. Like, we're muscling. So it's like, well, I can muscle too, and just muscled my way through, 10 cars or whatever. And meanwhile, I'm on foot. And then, later on, it's like, well, what's that all about? Oh, that's right. I started eating more food. The testosterone went up just immediately, right? And, I don't have a lot of advice for the men or the males, but, perhaps the greatest gift a male or a man could give to himself, or one of the greatest, is to do whatever the body needs to maximize the body's natural production of testosterone. Because let's not forget, folks, Benton here going to turn 50 this month, and I'm at the age when a lot of guys go on hormone replacement therapy, HRT, which is it's steroids. Because they say, well, what do you mean? No, it's testosterone. Yeah, that's a steroid. As far as your body's concerned, injecting or oral or transdermal patch or whatever, as far as the body's concerned, that's a steroid, right? When the body makes it, it's different. My body can make all the testosterone at once, and the testicles have to be operating. When the testosterone is introduced externally, when that happens above a certain level, the testicles stop producing testosterone and androgens, right? And again, this is not medical advice. I'm not an endocrinologist, but this is my understanding of how this works. And back in the weightlifting days, I never got accused of being on steroids because I was not lean enough, right? At a certain point, I got lean enough, pretty lean, but I lost enough mass to get that lean that I still didn't look like I was on steroids. And this was back in my 30s. And really most of the time looked more like somebody that played a linebacker in football when I had that muscle mass. And I learned a lot about how hormones work, and I learned a lot about maximizing natural testosterone production. And a good way to look at maximizing it is to start with, well, what minimizes it? And what minimizes it is the number two, and this is actually when hormone replacement therapy became a thing. And I was on some of these, I was never a bodybuilder, but I was on like some of these bodybuilding forums getting the knowledge back in the day. And people were talking about, okay, I want to go get on HRT, but I have normal testosterone. Can I temporarily lower it, then go get checked by the doc and get on, a legally prescribed testosterone? People wanted to do this, as a way to get on steroids effectively. And so here's the advice: get drunk and don't sleep. That's all that they say to do. And maybe don't eat as much. Right. So maybe reduce the calories, but then absolutely, if one is a drinker, get drunk. Right. And if the person gets drunk at night, that accomplishes the not sleep part, because even if one gets drunk and passes out, they still don't sleep. That's not restful sleep. And in fact, back when I was boozing it up, people would be like, how can you drink first thing in the morning? I'm like, I have to drink first thing in the morning because I need to be able to be sober enough by bedtime to actually sleep. So it's like, it's out of necessity that I was drinking in the morning. So because it's the only way to be able to go to sleep. Again, yeah, you can pass out at night. There's no restful sleep there. So reversing that, we look at avoiding alcohol for the most part, if not entirely. And then number two, proper sleep, proper high quality sleep. Very important. And then, avoiding, any sort of soy, estrogens, all of these various things as much as possible. And then proper nutrition, getting proper nutrition, vitamin D, a big one, of course, magnesium, a big one. And none of this is advice. This is just what I know to work, and do your own research. But man, not that I felt bad before, but I feel fucking fantastic. Right. I feel fucking fantastic. In fact, I do these dead hangs every day, which has been wonderful for my, my spine and my various tissues, and, 2 to 3 times a day. But I haven't been doing any pull-ups, and I'll do one every once in a while just to make sure I can still do a proper pull-up. And it's funny because I went to the pull-up bar yesterday and I was like, fuck it, I might as well do a pull-up. And I had a feeling like it was going to be pretty easy, but then, the last time I did one, it wasn't the easiest thing in the world. So there's a little bit of doubt, a little bit of doubt. It was like the easiest pull-up I've ever done. And I probably could have cranked out 3, historically I could always do like 5, but there has been some loss of strength, coming out of this chronic illness. I lost a lot of my strength, and some of it has returned. But yeah, it was just banged it out, no problem. I was like, wow, look at this. So, the positive effects on testosterone, while simultaneously recognizing that society and this so-called war on men and war on testosterone, like society and Moloch's machine is doing everything in its power to keep the males making lower levels, when possible. Right. So yeah, good stuff. We lost close to half the audience on the testosterone rant, but that's okay. It's an exclusively male audience at this point. So what's the difference? And yeah, Benton here, afflicted with the odd manner, right? Let's go down the scoreboard. So Benton here, uh, NFL All-Pro wide receiver genetics, although a 1940s NFL All-Pro receiver. Um, uh, Medically high testosterone that he got from the same side of the family as the NFL wide receiver genetics. But then afflicted with the odd manner, right? In that's the way it was phrased in the book Angela's Ashes. You know, fake undiagnosed autism, right? Born into a mind control cult called the Jehovah's Witnesses that I never joined and never consented to, right? So these things, debatably, arguably handsome, right? Uh, at least as society becomes more and more in love with physical facial appearance, certainly being treated as such. Uh, Believe me, 20 years ago, nobody gave a fuck other than, this small group of women that were, well, accepting gay dudes, but they're not that picky necessarily, but from what I've seen, but, this small group of women that were big fans of old Benton here, right? And I've said before, most women have the good sense to want absolutely nothing to do with Benton, and I respect that. Absolutely. I have a great deal of regard for the ladies. Oh, no woman bashing over here, folks. Certainly not. Certainly not. Always have. I always have had a lot of regard for the ladies. And so, it balances out. So, yeah, it's great that Benton doesn't have to consider hormone replacement therapy. But then, for some of the fellas, what I would encourage them to do if they asked me was to go to the doctor last, right? Maybe get the blood work first and get the levels checked and get, and of course, the doctor, if it's low enough levels, is going to say, hey, okay, we're going to put you on testosterone. And it's possible. I don't know if you folks know this, but there's these like Quest Diagnostics or whatever. A person can just go on the website, schedule a fucking blood draw, and just have the testosterone checked. And I don't know, it's like $100 or whatever. And then they'll email you the results. And it's pretty easy to just Google, like, it's in nanograms per deciliter, whatever that number is, and just sort of Google, like, what are the ranges based on the ages and all of this? Is this normal? Is this low? Is this high? Pretty easy work there. Everything works better, right? As long as a person knows how to deal with aggression, their own aggression, depending on how high that level goes. It feels great, man. I slept great, I feel great, plenty of energy. But none of that was lacking. It's just sort of everything works better when that's optimized, if that makes sense. And I do know from my studies of how testosterone and androgens work that some of the crankiness, not all of it, but some of it is, or just in the past, sort of an autistic freak out or whatever, it would be more likely to happen because natural levels fluctuate. So if I'm not getting proper sleep, that's going to put me into more of the lower region of my own natural production. And at that lower level, I've noticed being more inclined to irritability and like edginess, right? Which is it's funny because it's sort of the behaviors that are associated with roid rage. But from what I've seen, if a person's not actually, taking something external to pump up the hormone levels, it sort of works in reverse. It's when the levels are lower than normal for a person who has, is more on the high side, if that makes sense. I'm more likely to be calm and chill and feeling good with the higher levels, but then it's like if somebody else introduces aggression into the environment, that switch can flip where, oh, it's on, we're going aggressive. Well, let me show you what aggressive is, right? Oh, okay, we're doing it, and then I'm probably going to be, if not the most aggressive, one of the most aggressive, if that makes sense. And that's genetic. So some people, just the way humans work, they're like, oh, they might feel like they're lacking something. It's like, we can't separate the bad from the good. So yeah, here's your naturally high testosterone medically. And my own father, last time I saw him, his was still sky high. But what does society say? Oh, well, a man's testosterone declines with age. No, it doesn't. That's a myth. When you group all men together, the group's levels decline over time. That has nothing to do with my levels. Absolutely nothing. I bet you, right, if I had this morning took a testosterone test, I would bet whatever little bit of money I've got left that I could hit a 750, which is high. That's high that would be considered uh, uh, not high for an 18-year-old, but that would be in the normal range for an 18-year-old, right? Well, actually, be in the middle of the normal range now that I think about it, for like an 18-year-old. But yeah, it's like, okay, here's your medically high aggression and testosterone. These seem like awesome masculine traits, but here's your odd manner. So good luck fitting into society in the long run. And then, and people, and over time with the corporate structure and society and Moloch's machine making individuals as more alike as possible, society becoming less and less acceptable of people who are just strange and different and odd. So yeah, here's your odd manner, your high testosterone, your neurodivergence, right? Which comes with its own benefits and curses, right? I shouldn't say curse. Comes with its own high points and low points. So when we average it out across the board, maybe overall your gifts are equivalent to my gifts. It's just they're different gifts, And also you're talking to a person who does what is in his power to maximize what's already a high potential for testosterone. So why not? But some of that comes around diet also. Some of that comes around avoiding certain foods, right? It comes with, okay, well now the being needs to go to sleep more or less at the same time every night, and to get proper rest, and to not be sleeping, next to the phone and then checking notifications in the middle of the night, right? Like none of that. And then, oh, well, it looks like, like I would wake up and just not be able to go back to sleep, so eventually sort of training myself. And this is something that's only really happened for me since the unlocking of the achievement of true knowledge of self, which is to be able to wake up and to not immediately go into some version of I don't have sleep apnea, but to go into some version of a sleep apnea attack because I'm being spiritually attacked in my sleep or whatever. Spiritually attacked in my sleep again last night, if anybody's curious. I don't even remember the mechanism, but 100% spiritually attacked in my sleep. Going through some version of just being worried about something, a dream, a worry dream, right? And just with some nonsensical thing that I was worried about, trying to placate some apparatchik of the system, probably. Goodness gracious, some bureaucrat somewhere. I think it was some lady that I guess in the dream I believed myself to be beholden to for whatever reason. And I think her plan, she had a bad plan in the context of the dream, and I'm attempting to convince this person. That should have been my clue that this was a dream, because I'm no stranger to lucid dreaming. Right? That should have been my clue that this was like, wait a minute, why am I appealing to this broad, trying to convince her that my plan is superior? What is this? Interesting. And I many years ago, I gave up on trying to analyze the content of my dreams. I recognize that my dreams are meaningless. The content is meaningless. It's more or less the mind is like defragging or whatever. If anybody remembers the old days of defragging of hard disks. And I don't believe that's a thing anymore, strictly speaking, or generally speaking. Is that the new literal? I can't. I've now lost the ability to properly use generally and strictly speaking. What is this, man? What even is this? Oh man, it's Friday, which means not a whole lot to me, of course, the way I live. And I would not say that I miss truck driving. I would say that I enjoy driving an 18-wheeler. I like driving it. Not a huge fan of the backing up. Finally, at my level of experience, I'm able to do it, without it being too dramatic. But again, okay, here's a perfect example of afflicted with the odd manner. I love this because I'm proficient at backing up a big rig, but because I don't do it in the same way that other people would do it, it's when I'm working as a truck driver, it often happens that I'll be setting up to back in, and just the way I do my setup, it starts setting off this must be a rookie alarm bells, and then other people want to try to intervene on my behalf, right? And so back to the idea of having a proper society and individuals conducting themselves properly. The last time I walked up to the homeless feed, which will probably be the last time for a while, but who knows? And some of it's just a curiosity, because like I've been like 5 or 6 times total recently, and I think I only ever went once or twice in the past. And I almost bought a papaya like a week ago, but they're $2 a pound. This is like fucking $15 for a papaya or whatever. It's like, yeah, not really worth it. But my body wanted a papaya. Well, I walked in there one day, and they were handing out papaya, like the same size papaya I was gonna buy, right? So that sort of thing, keeps me coming back to some extent. But so there was a truck driver, full size sleeper cab, 53-foot dry van, who's, he's in the process of he's had to pull into the property where there's not enough room for an 18-wheeler. So he's got to pull in, and then he's got to back out just to get back to the street, to then be able to back in to be able to get unloaded. Like, this is a whole process. So I see what he's going through, and I'm just like, hey man, I'm a driver. Let me know if you need a spot. And then I just stand off to the side and I sort of watch what's happening, and he's free to say, hey man, what's going on over there? Like, but what I'm never going to do is take over what he's doing. I'm just making myself available, which is actual help. And then after a few moments, I'm like, I see that he knows what he's doing and he's got everything lined up properly. And I'm like, all right, man, I see you got it. Have a good day. He's like, all right, yeah, thanks. African fellow, probably from the Congo. And for some reason, a lot of those, there's a specific subset they're just really good at backing up for some. And I don't mean the Africans or Congolese. It's just, I've recognized over time, there's certain, and a lot of times it's black folks, whether they're from America or not, are just really fucking good at backing up. I don't know why that is. There's a lot of white dudes that are really good at it too, of course. But, and I could have done what he was doing, but he definitely performed the maneuvers way quicker than I would have been able to. But just, I would have done it in such a strange way that if it was a truck stop or a shipper or a receiver, it starts setting off the alarm bells for somebody who wants to help, number one. But then number two, there's people that they want to find a rookie to fuck with. And when I was an actual rookie, you wouldn't even believe the ways I got fucked with on some of these shippers and receivers. It got so eventually I would just recognize that they're just wanting to fuck with me. And I would just pull the brakes, meaning set the air brakes, because it makes this loud, dramatic. It's obvious to everybody that the rig is no longer capable of movement because he's released the air from the air system. And I would just pull the brakes and just look at the person. Because people would do things like they would intentionally just haul ass directly towards my truck and then act as if I was holding them up. But then what I noticed was, like, most of the people who actually were trying to get somewhere and do something would sort of hang back and kind of patiently wait, recognizing that, yeah, this rookie might struggle for a minute and we might need to help him. But then, some people would just, as soon as there was space to get through, they would just shoot on through the open space, which, that's okay, I guess, as long as I see them coming. But then these other ones they had no reason to be driving over to where I was other than to just fuck with me, right? And that's a big part of society, is to recognize there's a lot of folks out here that are looking for opportunities to fuck with people. They're looking for that. So I would just pull the brakes and just look at them. And if I had to, I would just climb out of the cab and just kind of be like, hold my hands up, like, what are we doing? Like, what is this? Because clearly you're going to have to wait, sir. And these interventions are going to make it take longer, right? These interventions and eventually I got to just telling people, once I was proficient at backing up, it was like, I would just get out and say, hey, I understand that you want to help me, but because of the way my brain works, it's going to take longer if you try to help me. Because all they know how to do is take over. And the next thing you know, they're down there on the ground giving hand signals that I lack the ability to decode. And they're spinning their finger around to try to denote which way to turn the wheel. But my brain can't decode any of that. In fact, I figured out pretty quickly that whatever I see in the mirrors is not what everybody else sees, so I'm already, dealing, again, yeah, there's all of these seeming upsides to being Benton, but it comes with all these downsides, right? Good luck dealing with that, you know, good luck to you. And it comes back to people's expectations, right? Like, this is the way it's done. And my thing is, well, I'm here to make money, and I can't make my money unless this ass into this trailer bumps that dock back there, and I've never not bumped the dock, right? So I'm going to get it in there. It's just the way I do it is going to look different. And I think that says a lot about the corporate structure and making things more, homogenous and looking the same. Is who cares if I do it in a different way and it doesn't take any longer, if you average out the amount of time it takes me to hit a dock, I'm not going to be the quickest, but I'm not going to be the slowest. I'm probably like right in the middle somewhere. What's the difference? And what is the motivation for these other individuals to attempt to intervene on my behalf, right? It reminds me of this last truck driving job, and I guess we're just telling trucker stories now. So if anybody's interested, that's great. If not, that's okay too. Maybe we'll get back on some kind of spiritual societal rant or whatever. We'll see. But it was in Mississippi. Is this last trucking company, and I stopped for the day. And when it's up to me, I usually quit pretty early in the day. I'm done. I was done for the day by like 2 p.m. or whatever. And I had prepaid for parking, right? I had reserved parking ahead of time. And so I'm backing in, right? I'm backing into my spot. And so when the person backs in at a truck stop, at a certain point, the cab of the truck is becoming even with the other cabs of the other trucks. And there's a guy to my left, just sitting in his driver's seat who's already parked. He's smoking a cigarette. And as soon as I look to the left, because remember, I'm looking around everywhere, watching my mirrors, making sure I'm not crashing into shit. It's my job to not hit things. And in fact, it's one of the major reasons I'm still employable as a truck driver is I don't crash into things. I don't damage things. And I take this very seriously. And then as I'm looking at him, he's with his cigarette in his hand, he's making a motion for me to roll my window down. Well, number one, and this is probably part of the high testosterone and the sort of anti-authority, I don't just let strangers give me orders. So this is a stranger who's giving me a directive, right? Why am I being given a directive? Because if he really wants to talk to me, there's other ways to achieve this other than giving me an order, right? I could also I could start making hand motions. Hey, open your door, climb down, walk around here and talk to me type shit, right? I could get out of the truck, get down to the ground level and then motion for him to join me, right? Like, two can play this game. If he can boss me around with gestures, I can boss him around with gestures. And what we find is that generally the type of person who will start making hand motions at a stranger will not respond to strangers giving them hand motions. Have y'all ever noticed this? This is an interesting thing. And this is it's something about human behavior. A person can gain a lot of knowledge about a stranger just by sort of testing them to see how they react. So I just look at the guy because I had a day. Okay. And, the logical part of my mind is he trying to tell me don't park there or you're going to have to pay? And I'm looking at him and he looks like he's broke as a joke and doesn't have a pot to piss in. So he's probably just parked there for an hour or two, and then he's most likely going to leave or whatever. But who knows? I think maybe he stayed the night. But for whatever reason, it's always under the guise of helpfulness. Well, I'm an experienced truck driver. I don't need help backing in and parking in a reserved spot or I'm on top of this. See? And then if we, tested him and we tested me, like, I'm going to be the more capable. Like, you could have 100 people just look at him and then look at me and ask them questions like, who is the more capable? Who is the more responsible? Who would do better on like a multiple choice test? Like, it's me, right? So why is this person now trying to get me to acquiesce to, I'm just going to give him authority over what I'm doing. And see, that's what happens with a lot of these people that want to come help you back in. They're actually removing my autonomy and my authority if I allow them to, right? And I hate this expression, but it works so well, but I hate it, which is this guy I knew many years ago would say, "I'm fucking this cat, you just hold the tail." Which I hate that expression, but it perfectly encapsulates whatever that is. It's like, hey man, you're not in charge, I am. If you want to help, that's fine, but I'm gonna do the major thing, and you're gonna assist if necessary, right? And again, I'm a little disappointed in myself for now I'm imagining that, which is, yeah, see, that's a problem. That's a problem. Anyway, let's perhaps never say that again, Mr. Benton. But yeah, so I just look at him like, and I recognize that there's nothing good can come of me talking to this guy right now, because, whether I was angry or frustrated or whatever that is. And I just looked at him and grabbed my side curtain and just pulled the curtain. And so now we're no longer looking at each other, because it's like, what is this, man? Like, what is that? I've never figured out what that is. And of course, people will say, oh, he wanted to be helpful. Yeah, it's not helpful, though. So if a person has a desire to be helpful, this ties into effectiveness or the lack thereof. Why is the individual not concerned about making sure that what they're doing is actually representative of help? And then they say, oh, well, but isn't it the spirit? No, it's not the spirit of his intent. Absolutely not. He could absolutely hate everything that he believes I stand for, and recognize that I need help and be willing to help me. And if he actually appropriately helps me, why would I care that his intention was actually that he actually despised everything he believed that I represented? Why would I care? Versus somebody else who may plausibly be possessed of a true intention, but who lacks the ability to properly act on their intention in a way that honors my own authority and autonomy over my own processes. And see, that's a violation. For me to accept someone else just seizing control of my own processes and my own autonomy and authority, that's a violation. And what we see is that a lot of people will simply acquiesce to that. And then it's, how many times has Benton run into somebody interrupts my day, and then I respond however I respond, and they're like, oh, you don't have to be that way. It's like, well, wait a minute. You're the one that came over here and talked to me, buddy. I didn't come talk to you. Like, what is this? Meanwhile, if I go talk to somebody and they respond some type of way, I'm never going to be like, oh, well, now it's the behavior police. Like, hey, man, what is this? Why are you behaving this way? It's like, what do you mean? I'm imposing on them to some extent, right? Like, so some people would say, how could you be so rude? Well, what about this guy's feelings? Well, what about him? He's a grown ass man. That's for him to deal with. The feelings of how he's going to feel some type of way about having the metaphorical door slammed in his face when I pulled the curtain, right? Well, fuck him. Who cares? And this is somebody I would not trust to park my car, like, for real, which reminds me, broadcasting from, Nissan, the backseat of a Nissan Versa parked on the streets of Los Angeles, lest we forget. I wouldn't trust this guy to park my car. Just looking at him, crazy, man. I'll never fully understand these things. But anyway, it's fun to talk about at times. Get some of that off my chest. I'm certain I've talked about that before, but probably talked about it when it happened, actually, now that I think about it. Good times. I trust that everyone's well. That picture, the thumbnail, that drawing. I screwed up the camera angle. I didn't leave enough extra space. The aspect ratio of the picture I took is so different than the aspect ratio of the thumbnails. But it's actually outside of a church, and right above where that whatever that is, that figure is drawn, it says "Come as you are." So it actually works way better, because that drawing of somebody that appears to be inebriated and down and out, perhaps, or like a mouse or whatever that is, underneath the awning, and the awning says "Come as you are." I thought that was pretty interesting, uh, but wasn't able to get it in the thumbnail. And there weren't enough. As much as enjoy looking at myself, right? Was not able to find a picture of myself that I felt like slapping up there. Anyway, surely I'm not out of things to talk about. Is that even possible? Don't make me go to the notebook. Don't make me start reading John chapter 15 again, right? Well, there's no live chat, sir. You've done this to yourself. That's okay. That's all right. And yeah, I guess I'll keep yapping about my life since we're here and I've got the data for it. Data restarts in like 3 or 4 days. Um, and I try not to get into the specifics so much, but I have found a way to eat, at least for the time being, and to have some measure of control over the foods I'm eating. So that's good. Um, and folks are always welcome to donate, and some folks do, but I would say that we're not seeking donations at this time. They're always nice if and when they come, but yeah, certainly, especially with the true knowledge of self, the recent true knowledge of self, unlocking that achievement within the game, and somehow, some way, having been provided for, all my life, right, spiritually guided and protected and provided for, and then by what I am, that force that I'm one with, that force of abundance. But then it's the notion of an abundant realm. No, it's not. It's a realm of lack. Again, another inversion. Oh, it's a world of abundance. No, it's not. It's the inverse of that. It's a world of lack. It's a world of death and lack. That again, that's another mockery. Oh, the world's abundant. Okay, well, that's not what I'm seeing when I look around. I'm seeing quite the opposite. I'm seeing fabulously wealthy people who were born into fabulous wealth who are continuing to just take. And then I see in the YouTube comments, so we got bankers just perpetually sucking off the tit of the taxpayer, right? And then I simultaneously see in the YouTube comments, well, and I understand a lot of that's bots or whatever, but Gen Z doesn't want to work, and just this notion of that somehow one is obligated to produce for society. How sick is that? How sick is it to be treated as if I have some sort of moral or otherwise, morally or otherwise obligated to produce for this system? No, I'm not. Absolutely not. Nope. And then I'll counter by saying, well, bankers don't produce anything. And the majority of W-2 income tax revenue collected by the federal government goes to already rich bankers who are so rich that 10 generations from now, their descendants won't ever have to lift a finger that they don't choose to lift. Because remember, in the pulling up of one's bootstraps externally, financially to produce for the system, nobody's lazier than actual wealthy people. They're the laziest of all because they have the greatest ability to practice laziness. The idea that, well, if somebody is experiencing lack in their life, that can only result from laziness. No, that's that's brainwashing and mind control. That I need to, that it's some sort of moral imperative to go out and produce, to use my own energies, efforts, gifts, toil every single day, other than the Sabbath. Not that anybody keeps that, but to 5 to 6 days a week, if not 7, I'm morally obligated to go out here and produce something so that it can then be given over to people who are already so fabulously wealthy that their wealth increases in every new moment. Because remember what I said about rich people, if their wealth doesn't increase every new moment, they don't know who they are. If they're not always getting more and more and more rich, they don't have an identity because their peer groups and the circles they run with, every single person on their level that they interact with is always getting richer every new moment. And so they no longer belong, at least even for a fleeting moment or two. If their wealth isn't increasing every moment, then they don't know who the fuck they are. It's an identity crisis. It's an existential crisis. So it has to be the way that it is because of the way the rich people are. And that those type of people cannot give a flying fuck about the underclass. See? And those people know that their wealth increases every moment because poor people get poorer every moment. They know this. And their own self-identity is far more important than the plight of the underclass. And then, oh, well, it's their fault anyway. If only they would have worked a little harder. Well, okay, that's interesting, Nepo baby. How did the Nepo babies hard work themselves into being born into wealthy families? See? And meanwhile, the Nepo babies never worked hard. Now, maybe they've chosen to. If the Nepo baby chooses to work hard, yeah, some people are just workaholics. That's fine. They're choosing to do that. Yeah, I've also chosen to work hard for no apparent reason at times. Yeah, who cares? Means nothing. You know, it's anybody can engage in performing as a workaholic if they choose to. That's representative of nothing. You know. Again, meanwhile, nobody's lazier than actual rich people. And this is a key point. In all of human history, no individual human has ever hard worked themselves into riches and wealth. It's never happened. Now, has somebody on their way to wealth worked hard to get up enough of a stake to then speculate in the markets or speculate, you know, on like oil drilling or whatever? Sure. Or mining for gold. Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure that's happened. Although probably it wasn't actual wealth, it was, you know, temporary affluence, you know. But because people say, well, what do you mean nobody's ever hard worked themselves? Well, I don't know. The first example that comes to my mind of somebody fabulously wealthy, like J.P. Morgan. Yeah, he was born into wealth, and then based on his own story, he then sort of took that wealth to the next level. Now, did he have to air quotes work hard? I don't know. Depends on what one considers hard work. I would say it was probably more of his cunning and his psychopathic way to step on other people, right, to advance even further in growing the wealth, and then probably the family connections he was born into, right, or married into, or maybe his dad married into, whatever it was. Like I don't really know the biography of J.P. Morgan, you know. Even a George Herbert Walker Bush married into something, right? Married into a family. You know, nobody has ever hard worked themselves into wealth, ever. Now, people say, "Oh, well, I know such and such." Yeah, they're temporarily affluent. Wealthy people can't become unwealthy. You know, and that's another secret of society and a secret of the system. When the actual whatever people think are the wealthy elites, once they're in that club and they're at that financial level, they can't become unwealthy. It's simply impossible. They're protected from themselves. They can't just, oh well, such and such developed a gambling addiction and now they've gone busto. No, they haven't. They've gone busto on whatever resources they were permitted to have access to. They still have access to fabulous wealth. They'll never not have access to fabulous wealth. There's nothing whatsoever that they can do to become unwealthy. That's what I'm talking about. See, and a person like that, if they can be the laziest person of all time, if they choose to be, you know, presumably they might need to meet like their own family obligations or whatever. So, you know, other than whatever they were born into, you know, it's going to be nobody else's business in the family. You know, they're just going to be able to go off and do whatever they want, and that's sort of the stereotypical rich playboy idea of the past. You know. And all of those things. But what is, again, the psychological programming, the mind control of the proletariat or the underclass or the masses is, well, work hard, live below one's means, and that's the path to wealth. No, that's the path to perhaps temporary affluence. Perhaps and even that's not a guarantee. Any number of catastrophes and series of poor events could occur to never quite get there, or to get there for a time and then to lose it, right? Or many people, such as my own father, they undo themselves. They go through the hard work and garner some amount of affluence for themselves and then fuck it off, through their own undoings and self-destructive behaviors. This is the way it works. So it's important to recognize all of these things. Because why? Because look at how harmful it is, because so many individuals are willing to internalize those attacks. Like, hey, why don't I have certain trappings of modern life? Why don't I own a home? Why don't I have this? Why don't I have that? Well, it's because the function of the economy is to make rich people richer every new moment into perpetuity. That's why. And, some people have the connections. Some people don't have the connections. Some people have the opportunity and take advantage of it. Some people have an opportunity and don't take advantage of it. Like it's all of these things all at the same time, And then some people just are lazy and fuck it off. Okay, yeah, I'm not saying hard work doesn't matter. I'm saying Americans seem to truly still believe that hard work alone can make a person rich. It's never happened. It's happened 0 times that a person applied hard work and then became fabulously wealthy. 0. It's always connections, a bit of good fortune, being in the right place at the right time, who the parents are, who the extended family is, what's the reputation of the family, all of these things, right? And then, hard work somebody's going to have to do something at some point at the level of hard work. But, what's the point of gathering those resources to only have to continue to work hard, right? And then here's how it's a bullshit game, that it can never be a moral imperative to work hard every day, is because in American society, the moment somebody plays the game well enough to retire early, nobody concerns themselves with, hey, well, that person over there is not working hard and producing for the system anymore, right? Well, if it's a moral imperative to get out of bed every day and be productive for society, how come somebody who was smart enough and played the game well enough to retire at the age of 30 or 40 or whatever, how come they're not expected to produce, right? Because remember, if it was communism or whatever, it was some version of, if it was a communist revolution and it hadn't yet corrupted enough, right? Would the early versions of a communist revolution, would it let somebody just declare, oh, I'm 30 and I'm retired, so no more production for society? Would that even be allowed? Right? Or, if there are actual lottery winners, Powerball or whatever. So now, morally speaking, there's no longer an imperative for them to produce for society. Are you crazy? See, again, this all has to be reconciled. And this is back to yesterday's notions of examining the belief systems. Based on yesterday's notions of examining the beliefs. See, I've lost everybody now. We're down to 3 people. I'm having such a go at the concept of hardworking oneself into wealth. They can't even hear this. This shows you how mind controlled people are. Now, some of this is the YouTube algorithm might not want people hearing this also. But are you hearing this? People can't even, either the algorithm is steering them away, or it's lying to me about the number of listeners, or people just can't hear that, wow, your Benton's probably right. Nobody's ever in a vacuum hard worked themselves all the way to fabulous wealth. It's never happened. So I'm actually having a go at one of the key pillars of what Americans would hold dear, is this concept of identity being based in some measure of hard work as a moral imperative. Bullshit. Again, what would Jesus do? What did Jesus do? Now, I would argue that Jesus was very productive every single day. And I would argue that Benton is very productive every single day. And it shows, but not productive in the way that society indoctrinates everybody, that I'm somehow, and especially to the right wing type of folks, that I'm somehow morally, I'm falling short morally by not going out every day and producing something of value to a a vacuous, delusory, adversarial realm of business transactions where it's America and we only measure in money. Right. So how can, again, a key point that maybe people fled the stream because they've never thought about it. Maybe they've never thought about, yeah, that makes sense. How come I'm treated like a immoral piece of garbage if I choose to just lay about for a week or two or a month or so if I'm able to? You know, what if I get laid off and I just tell people, hey, I'm just going to kick back and relax for a little while, right? Or just whatever that is, to a period of time of being viewed as non-productive, to people who considered a moral imperative to every single day go out and toil to be productive for society, right? But then how come it's okay if somebody plays their cards right, even if it's just somebody who goes to work for the city or the county when they're 18 and by age 38 they've saved and invested in that with their pension, and when combined with their pension, you know, maybe they know they're going to get an inheritance or whatever in 20 years or so, or, you know, at some point in the future. And they just say, yeah, we're done. I'm done working. And and what if it's a simple type of person, you know, who likes to live below their means and just wants to have a simple life? Why is it okay for them not to produce for the next? Because if they're 38 and working age, let's say, goes to 60 or 65, which, as we know, realistically, it goes beyond that now. So why do they get to do? Why don't they have to produce for the next 22 years? The next 20. Why do they get a free pass from now? Why is it not immoral when they don't produce for the next 22 years? See, the game shows itself. The game exposes itself because the game, in order to be a game, there must be rules. Whether those are unwritten rules, you know, whatever, however that operates, whether it's rules for thee, not rules for me, or whatever, rules for me and rules for thee, whatever that is, there has to be rules, or otherwise how can it be a game? So why is that within the rule book? See, the game exposes itself. Society exposes itself. The nonsense. And again, this is something that in the past I would have been willing to internalize such a spiritual attack. If I'm able to meet whatever metrics I'm choosing to meet, it can never be immoral for me to lay around in a car all day if that's what I choose to do. Hurting no one. It doesn't even need to be justified. I'm not obligated to do anything whatsoever. What did Jesus do? Well, he did not go out and produce for society every day. As far as the man who was again ostensibly executed for sedition, speaking out against the government, right? What he did not do was go to work every day to produce for society at a secular level. Okay, so many of his own followers, if they did not know who they were referring to, hearing those activities would say, well, that's wrong. Well, who is he to not produce for society? Oh, well, it's the Lord Christ Jesus. Right. It's okay that he didn't go out and work a job. Oh, well, he was a carpenter. There's no accounts of him building anything with a hammer and some nails, right? As an adult. And I'm unconcerned about what he may have engaged in as a minor. You know, if he went to work with his daddy or whoever and got trained in carpentry, who cares? I'm talking about what the man did as an adult in the stories. I'm not talking about him. Oh, well, he was a carpenter. Well, I'm a truck driver then. Meaning, I guess I get credit for driving a truck today, even though I'm going to lay around a car and do whatever else I feel like. See how that works? See how that works? Isn't that interesting? Hell, maybe I'm still a, IT support person. I mean, that's what people could say about me in the future. Oh, well, he was a truck driver. He was an IT support person. What do you mean he didn't work? What do you mean he wasn't productive for society? Well, I mean exactly that. Meanwhile, his overall production would be far beyond, anybody else's, right? And I don't know that I'm comparing myself with Jesus. This is certainly appropriate to draw these distinctions. And so why would I allow myself to be beholden to other people's belief systems out of convenience for them, right? And when they can't even When they're so not about it, they're so not about their own business that they can't even cope with having their own belief systems challenged. So much so that I looked down and there was 3 people in the stream. People fled the stream because I was having such a righteous go at this concept of hard work leading to wealth. It's never led to wealth. In all of human history, hard work by itself in a vacuum has never, ever, 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 ever led to wealth. Has it led to affluence? Absolutely. Is affluence temporary? Of course it is. What this realm considers actual wealth is lasting intergenerationally within families and bloodlines. They're born into it, folks. They're born into it. Nobody's hard worked themselves to that level ever, because it's a club and there is a vetting process, and they don't give a flying fuck about your hard work, partner. And in the early stages of hard work, those people look at you like you're a motherfucking fool to be working your fingers to the bone. And in fact, you're showing them what you believe your own value to be when you work your fingers to the bone to produce for this system and this society. Now, when you work your fingers to the bone for your loved ones, that's a little bit different now, ain't it? But then does that have to be done in ways that serve, above all else, the vacuous, delusory, adversarial realm of business transactions? Because that's where we get into the concept, well, I got kids, so I just got to go along with, whatever happens. So that's what we see, where Americans will go along with anything. There's no end to what Americans will tolerate. But then I still observe Americans that have some kind of poppycock notion that, well, things are soon to get bad enough and the masses are going to rise up. Oh, don't awake the sleeping giant. The people are going to rise up. They're not capable of it. And if they did rise up, they're not capable of fixing this, because they haven't even fixed their own internal space. How can I expect someone who's not willing, able, and capable of fixing their own internal space, how can I expect them to rise up and then externally, away from their own power sources, being disempowered, allowing themselves to be disempowered? How am I going to expect them to link up and fix shit? It's not possible, folks. It's not possible until individuals raise themselves up, mind, body, and spirit within themselves. It cannot happen. And individuals are not going to do that. Some will, and it's detrimental in the short term, right? It makes life more difficult, not easier. Now, my life is much easier in certain ways. It's much more difficult in other ways. Okay. Yeah. And that's life, the game of death within the world of lies, or vice versa. Again, if what you are is what I am, even if it's at the level of this little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine, or Nancy Pelosi's MS-13 spark of divinity, either way, if you are what I am and what I know myself to be, I think I lost my point, and my point got lost somewhere during the setup there. That's okay. It happens. Anyway, what was I on about? Something about the cleaning up, addressing the internal space. Why would I have said if what you are is what I am? I don't know. Phooey. Oh well. Perhaps the ideal shall return. Let's take a gander at Drudge Report. And I don't need to be reminded. I am fully aware of the nature of Drudge Report. This is a handy way to access what LARP says the official fiction layer. And I just can't even process the Epstein stuff. It's so much. It's just complete nonsense. I mean, the whole thing. Just and hearing people talk about it, or attempt to talk about it as if it was, as presented. Again, another mockery. Job growth slows sharply. See, and people, yeah, I don't even want to get into that. Stocks slide. Let's see what this says. Dow falls after Trump tariff blitz and weak jobs report. How much was it down, though? Anyway, I'm losing interest in that. White House building $200 million ballroom. Well, who cares? That's only 0.2 billion. That's nothing. And see, just being able to calculate amounts of money, 200 million sounds like a lot of money. 200 million in the context of the federal government is nothing. It's 0.2 billion. I don't know if y'all know this. The government, I've heard, is having to borrow $1 trillion in the next 90 days. Right. So that's almost $1 billion a day. It's borrowing. Right. So 20% of what it's going to borrow every single day for 90 straight days. That's nothing. 0.2 billion in the context of the federal government is nothing, folks. Nothing. So who cares? But 200 million sounds like a lot of money. You know, reminds me of when they built Bud Walton Arena in the 90s on the University of Arkansas campus, and it was considered a lot of money because it cost like 35 million. It's not a lot of, I'm telling you, it's not a lot of money. That was a lot of money for a university at the time to build a sports arena. $200 million in 2025 money for a ballroom, it's not a lot of money. It's not. But it sounds like a lot, and oh my God, the outrage, right? Fed's paying 154,000 people not to work. Oh, this is interesting. I saw this yesterday. Canada aggressively poaching U.S. Medical professionals. A so-called friendly neighbor is quietly siphoning off America's most essential workers, and experts warn it could deal a catastrophic blow to an already crumbling U.S. healthcare system. Canada is aggressively poaching doctors, nurses, and health professionals, offering simpler systems, universal care, and a political climate many in the liberal-leaning field may prefer to life under President Donald Trump. The exodus is accelerating at a stunning pace. Between November 2024 and April 2025, the Medical Council of Canada, MCC, saw a staggering 718% surge in U.S. medical graduates registering to get licensed across the border. That's a red flag that thousands of American-trained doctors are preparing to head north. Recruiters are cashing in. Can-Am Physician Recruiting, a firm specializing in cross-border placements, reported a 65% jump in U.S. doctors exploring jobs in Canada just this year. The Nova Scotia-based company now receives up to 15 serious inquiries each day from medical professionals keen to leave America. I don't know a lot about Canada, but if anybody's for reference, Nova Scotia, that's where Trailer Park Boys is set. Far East Canada, like above, New York and all that. At the heart of the trend is a Canadian campaign that some critics say amounts to a full-scale raid on America's struggling healthcare system. And, it's obvious to me at this point, America's just, has been hollowed out, continues to be hollowed out. And again, society's secret is that it's in a state of perpetual collapse. However, this is more collapsy than, this is more overtly collapsy than normal, I would say, or than usual, or than typical. Although it will soon become typical because Americans will tolerate anything. Because Americans will tolerate anything, it will soon become typical. Hopefully my audio's okay. I no longer have a means to be told if the audio's good or not, with there being no live chat. In British Columbia, now all the way on the western side of Canada, so from far east to far west now, officials have launched a $5 million ad blitz across Oregon, Washington, and California, targeting American hospitals already on life support. Billboards have popped up near emergency rooms, medical schools, and clinics with such slogans as evidence-based care and universal health care. And again, I'm going official fiction here. I'm not saying any of this is actually happening. I'm reading a news article. An unsubtle swipe at America's privatized model. In Portland, the ads are even plastered around Oregon Health and Science University. Been there, by the way, OHSU. There's a one of those tramway things, whatever they call that, gondolas, a major training ground for future U.S. doctors. It's free to the public gondola. British Columbia Premier David Eby did not hold back when he addressed the controversial campaign in May. President Trump's loss is British Columbia's gain, Eby said bluntly. Uncertainty in the U.S. creates an opportunity for us. You're welcome here. And this shows, the ideas in the past of this idea of being seen as mutually cooperative with one's neighbors, the idea of loving one's neighbor as itself. That's all gone now. It's all out in the open, which I would say previously it was more covert and subversive, the undermining of various mechanisms within society. And now it's just on Front Street how immoral and degenerated and decadent and depraved people are. And then they can easily justify it and say, well, look at what Trump has done to Canada. He's talked about annexing Canada. He's insulted Canada. So why wouldn't we, if Americans are dumb enough to elect this guy, again, going official fiction, why not loot their country? What do you think these immigrants say? A lot of, especially these African migrants and other migrants, is like, hey, might makes right in their worlds, probably to some extent, growing up with whatever warlord type of situations might be going on in Africa. They're like, hey, might makes right. If y'all are going to let us come in here and loot your country, we're going to come in here and loot your country. And Americans just watch it happen, right? Because there's no end to what an American will tolerate, period. That's just what an American is. Meanwhile, such provinces as Ontario, Quebec, Alberta, and Nova Scotia have loosened licensing restrictions for U.S. trained physicians. If you're board certified in the U.S., you can now obtain full licensure in much of Canada without sitting a single extra exam. Historically, a complex bureaucracy blocked many American physicians from practicing in Canada. Now those floodgates have flung open just as the U.S. faces a looming shortfall of 100,000 doctors. And I don't necessarily believe the shortfall. I mean, the trucking industry still claims a truck driving shortage that never existed in the first place, lest we forget. And nurses by 2028, according to the American Hospital Association. And it's the American Trucking Association that never shuts the fuck up about a truck driving shortage that, again, never existed and never will exist. Some doctors are speaking out. Michael, a primary care physician who left the U.S. for a small town hospital in Canada, told KFF Health News that working under President Trump was morally exhausting. Well, whatever, man. I don't even know what you're talking about. Part of being a physician is being kind to people who are in their weakest place. Well, see, it's not Trump that has anything to do with that. See, now we see the games being played. It's the corporate structure that makes sure that the physician is not in a position to be kind to people in their weakest place. It's not Donald Trump that's created that. See, this is nonsense, right? And I feel, see, not logic. I feel like our country is devolving to really step on people who are weak and vulnerable. Yeah, it is. And if you think it's any different in Canada, go have at it. It's not. Well, it's different, but it's not any better, I'm sure. Perhaps it's slightly less bad. How about that? Medical professionals say they're fed up with America's red tape. Well, I'm sure this is true because America not having nationalized health care. Medical professionals say they're fed up with America's red tape, endless insurance haggling, and Medicaid cuts under Trump's one big beautiful bill. Well, wait a minute. Even without this is just lies, because even without that bill, it was already that way. See, now is whatever Trump, again, not Trump, Trump's not doing anything. Whatever the government's doing, is it making it worse? Yeah, I'm sure it is. What's making it better for Moloch's machine and better for the system is making it worse for us, the common folk. Sure, of course it is. That was already happening. When Biden was the president, it was already happening. See, this shows you just the games and the psychological control being played here. The Congressional Budget Office warns the bill will leave 10 million more Americans uninsured by 2034. Well, yeah, but who cares? Fuck them. Maybe they could work a little harder and buy their own insurance. See, that's the typical American attitude, other than the bleeding hearts. The more right-wing MAGA types, oh, well, I guess they should work a little harder. I guess they're lazy. I guess they're just lazy, right? Those leaving, however, may have to face a pay cut. And meanwhile, lazy, wealthy elites, they have access to the best health care possible. And it has nothing to do with their work ethics. U.S. doctors often earn more with salaries in the $200,000 to $250,000 range for primary care. They mean in the U.S., but many find the simpler administration, lower overhead, and universal access in Canada more appealing. When factoring in the burdens of paperwork and lower living costs, see, I don't think there's not lower living costs. See, that's simply not true. Some doctors who have switched to Canada say they end up with about the same amount in their pocket each month. That would depend. That just depends on where they live and where they're moving from in the U.S. If they're moving from San Francisco to the Bay Area to an area in Canada that is comparatively less, if they're going from the Bay to Toronto or Vancouver, they're probably not. It's probably not the same in Canada. I don't believe that. Still, conservatives, such as some person, we're not going to say their name because who cares, say those heading north are making a big mistake because of Canada's higher taxes, eye-watering housing costs, and liberal rules on health care. Here, you won't find a house for your family to live in comfortably. Well, isn't that the U.S. in many places? The high taxes you'll pay, don't we have high taxes in America? Yeah, I understand they may be higher in Canada. The high taxes you'll pay will be used for providing drugs to addicted people and catching and releasing criminals who might stab or run you over. Well, and it also provides universal health care, and it also provides an actual social safety net for people who need it, lest we forget. An actual social safety net, unlike the United States. Critics say America is hemorrhaging talent at the worst possible time, almost as if it was being done on purpose to serve the system itself. The system is already on its knees after COVID-19 with overworked staff, aging practitioners, and not enough medical school graduates to keep up with demand. The American Hospital Association warns that the U.S. will be short 100, blah, blah, blah. Well, that's all hype. Anyway, that's enough of that. I think we're almost out of here. Give me a second. Cold as ice, woman who died in custody told son she wasn't allowed to see doctor for chest pains. Died of a heart disease, apparently. Masked agents could face jail in Michigan, which I doubt would ever hold up in the long run through legal appeals. Federal judges would overturn that, in my opinion. Kamala book release. Justin Timberlake has Lyme disease. Women falling in love with AI. Anyway, experts predict super intelligent bots will lead to extinction of humanity. Well, how can there be an expert in super intelligent bots? How is it even possible to be an expert in super intelligent bots leading extinction of humanity? Well, there could be experts in that if that's what the system is aiming to do. Researchers negotiating $250 million pay packages. Again, $250 million is not a lot of money. Now, it is for an individual person, if that's their pay package, of course. Combat cocktail. So on the one hand, I'm supposed to be outraged that there's $200 million being spent to refurbish a White House ballroom, but an AI researcher is negotiating $250 million pay package just like an NBA star. Well, that somehow makes complete sense. So the same amount of, it's like, it's the government spending less money to build a ballroom than, than the system, the financial system would give to one AI researcher, a talented AI researcher. What's the fucking difference? And as we know, people no longer processing data. People no longer figuring this out for themselves. All right, I've had enough. I've had all I can stands. I can't stands no more. Thanks for listening. Bye.